Welcome back to AI for Founders. I'm your host, Ryan Estes. I am not AI. And today's episode is going to expand your mind. My guest is Jody Medich, a pioneering designer, artist, and futurist who's worked on everything from Microsoft HoloLens to the frontier of cognitive ergonomics. That's right, how we think and interact with AI at the speed of thought. We talk about why our current interface with AI, think chatbots and screens, is wildly outdated, and how new technologies like XR can unlock superhuman potential. Jody's personal story of survival and revolution runs deep, and her vision for the future is both empowering and profound. If you've ever wondered what comes after keyboards or what it really means to augment humanity with AI, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. But first, some business. This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster, the podcast booking agency for high-growth startups. If you're a founder, executive, or expert looking to grow your brand and share your story, podcast interviews are the single best way to build trust, authority, and real connections without spending your whole day creating content. At Kitcaster, we book hundreds of leaders every month on the perfect shows for their audience, and we make it easy. No cold emails, no awkward pitches, just smart, strategic placements that drive results. Ready to go on great podcasts and sound amazing? Visit kitcaster.com to apply.
Live tonight, shining stars, computer light. Take the flight in the glow of neon bright.
Jody, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Now, I'm really excited about this conversation, largely because I don't really understand it yet. So I'm excited to dive into the work that you do. Before we do that, if you could live in any era except for this one, which would it be?
Any era except for this one. Probably. Well, I feel like there's a lot of parallels between this one and the start of the Industrial Revolution. With the similar kind of upheaval that we're about to experience here. So I don't know, maybe then, because there's a lot of innovation and invention that was happening there, and I'm a big fan of all of that. So yeah, and I love engines.
Yeah,
and motors.
It seems like it was very coaly. There was a lot of pollution in those days. When I think about that era, it is amazing. The Rockefellers and the Carnegies and like all that stuff.
Yeah.
You a fan of Red Dead Redemption 2?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's this video game. It's so cool. But it's like all kind of turn of the century Industrial Revolution time. So, you still have kind of the settling of the Old West, and the South is basically French, and like you have massive cities being built. Anyway, you get to run around in there and like kill people on horseback. It's a great game. But
I don't know if I want to be there for the killing part. I mean, so these paintings behind me are actually paintings about my family's history during World War I and World War II, which always sounded pretty terrible to me. So I don't know if I want to be around for that part.
Yeah.
But
tell me about it. What was your family's history in World War I, World War II?
So we are Hungarian, and we lived on the border of Austria-Hungary. And during World War II in particular, this is where most of the stories I know come from. During World War II, we were smuggling Jews into Hungary because Hungary was protecting the Jews at the start of the Second World War. And then once the Soviets came and took over Hungary, communists, we were smuggling anybody who needed to get out into Austria because our family lived across the border from each other. So
wow.
Lots of crazy stories. My grandfather was both in a concentration camp and the Gulag for his work being a revolutionary. So yeah, they had to escape by the skin of their teeth during the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. So that's why we all came here.
Holy smokes, that's wild. How did he make it through concentration camps and the Gulag? Did he escape, or was he able to maneuver out?
No, he wasn't in a death camp. The concentration camp was a work camp. And then the gulag, he was sentenced to 18 months. So
Yeah, dang.
yeah, but he came out without any fingernails. So
Ooh.
there's that.
Oh, yeah,
Awful.
that's rough.
Yeah,
What an
I know.
incredible
But
story, though.
yeah, they're all amazing. It's a really incredible story of survival. And what's great is that when I show this work, this is my work. When I show this work in galleries, I get to hear all these people who have this survivor mindset, and lots of people tell me about the heroic lengths that not only their grandparents or their parents but themselves have come through to live the life that they dream of. And it's always such a, I don't know, such an empowering narrative to hear and to be surrounded by. So
100%. Yeah, it's
yeah, it's funny is my grandfather, all he wanted to do was move to California, but my grandmother wouldn't let him. So they had to move to the middle of the country to where her family was. And so I live in California, so I always think I'm living my grandfather's dream.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild to think, we're going to have a conversation here about AI, but like our grandparents, my wife's grandfather, he joined World War II very late because he was a kid. So I think he enlisted when he was 16. So when he was 17, he got shipped out. So as it would be, like he was basically on a tank on the front lines of liberating the concentration camps. So before people really knew, I mean, there was kind of like rumors of what was going on, but they didn't really know. Like he was part of those people that found out. I mean, discovered like the atrocities there.
Wow.
And he has this great. It's like an essay that probably took him his whole life to write and edit that he gave to the family. It was probably 10 years ago, and it was incredible.
Wow. Wow. Incredible what our grandparents went through. I really pray that, we don't have to learn that, or our children don't have to learn that. So let's keep our fingers crossed for a good future here.
100%.
A good future outcome.
Speaking of the future, Jody, explain to the listeners here your work.
Sure. Sorry about that. I work on emerging technology, specifically around AI, XR, and robotics. And what I work on is how do we create technologies that amplify and extend our abilities as humans? So rather than like becoming trained to operate these devices and this technology, or kind of being replaced by these technologies, how can we actually amplify what it means to be human, to quite literally make us superhuman? So not supercomputers. I don't want to be a supercomputer. I want to be a superhuman. And so a lot of the work that I do is around how do we create interface that allows us to co-think with AI. So, there's this kind of school of thought that we're in right now where AI is kind of in an almost skeuomorphic way. We're treating it like it's humanoid or human-like. And in fact, when you talk to a lot of big AI developers, what their main goal is to create intelligence that is as good as, if not better than, human intelligence. And I think that's a little bit of a faulty mental model. And I understand where it comes from. Humans will put, some eyes on a rock and call it, our rock friend, and we'll have, an emotional relationship to it because we've kind of anthropomorphized it, right? And so we try to do that with almost anything, like, cars. There's certain cars when you're driving, especially the Kias. When I drive behind those Kias, they just look like angry little ninjas looking back at me, with those headlights and stuff. And it's kind of really difficult for us not to try to make something seem human-like or ascribe human emotions and human needs to some object, even if it's completely devoid of any of those things. So I understand the impetus to try to make humanoid types of AIs, but I think that we're missing out on something really great, and I blame first the mental model and secondly the interface for that, because AI has traditionally been rather difficult to develop, and you need like data scientists and AI experts to create it, that people think of it as being really complicated, and so they can't imagine being able to master it and leverage it to do things. But as AI becomes more and more intelligent, or capable, I would say is a better word for it, to take on a lot of the tasks that we need it to do, it can automate a lot of the tasks that we can do. It becomes more and more important for us to be able to leverage it to amplify our own thinking, as opposed to kind of offloading our thinking into the basically software that AI is.
Yeah, that raises a couple of interesting things that I'm really fascinated with. One, you're talking about, skinning AI with human emotion. And we do that already. If ChatGPT is the most popular experience people have with large language models, and this kind of chat function is how we interact with it now, it's already doing that. It's like kind of adding emotive content to when it replies to you. What's your take on that?
Yeah, like I said, I think that's more like the skeuomorphic approach. And I don't know if you were around during the early days of the web. That's when I got started back in '94, working on all this stuff. And, back then, when you went to a gallery, right, it looked like a room with images attached to the walls. And that's how you looked at images online. It was not a good user experience. But it was our brains trying to make this new model work, right? Like trying to make sense of this. And so we went to the skeuomorphic, right? And so I really think that this kind of approach is just, okay, well, we don't know how else to interact with AI other than treating it as a chatbot or like having a conversation with it. And also, I think, Hollywood plays a large role in that, because when we look at AI in Hollywood, it's often, some intelligent entity that's trying to kill humanity. So why not make chatbots that, kind of pull forth that mental model? But, in when we were first developing PCs, we had a similar issue where we had, big mainframe compute. And so the idea of why would I want that technology that doesn't, like, I wouldn't be able to use it. And so it wasn't until Douglas Engelbart and the folks at Xerox PARC and Stanford Research Institute kind of came up with a new way of thinking about a new mental model of what compute was, and created a whole new user interface, which we today call graphical user interface, and the mouse, hardware and software interface to compute. That we suddenly went from, okay, it's for, big industrial uses only, to, oh no, this is a personal productivity tool. And it really changed our way that we thought about technology. And the interface changed so significantly that, Apple at the time was putting out these ads about, if you can point, you can use a computer. And before that, it was really scary, right? And so what we don't have right now is that mother of all demos. We need that mother of all demos kind of update to the interface in order for people to recognize what this technology is really going to be used for in the majority of our daily activities and in our lives. And it's not going to be human replacive. It's going to be human augmenting.
Yeah. We need AI Steve Jobs to do that demo and be like, wait, there's one more thing. You're like, oh my.
Right. Ooh, more thing, right? And so, like, if you think about that change was a massive, it wasn't like all the supporting technology was there. There were smaller terminal type computers. We had like a screen, and instead of doing the like punch cards, now you could, thanks to Microsoft, you could do MS DOS, to communicate with devices. And what that switch was largely an ergonomics switch. It was the ergonomics of the tool set, the hardware, because we introduced keyboards, we introduced a mouse that allowed you to point, and then we created an interface that created these images that were shortcuts for typing in a bunch of 010101s, right? And that massively changed who could use it and what it could be used for. And so we need an ergonomic overhaul of that same type of interface so that your average person can, say, spin up a bunch of different AI tool sets for their own bespoke needs. And so, that's both physical ergonomics, the physical devices of it all, but also the cognitive ergonomics. Or in other words, thinking about if we have a technology that is capable of thinking, then we need interface to that technology that's as fast as the speed of human thought. And so cognitive ergonomics basically looks at the way that human thought mechanically works in the brain and tries to create systems in interface that allows for that kind of speed of thought interface to a thinking technology.
Is this like a Neuralink type situation?
No, you don't have to go that far. In fact, I don't, like you can create a mind machine. So if we talk about brain machine interface, right? Like wires in your brain, I think that's a whole nother category. It's a very interesting category that I've actually worked on. And I think it's really interesting, but I'm talking more of like a mind interface. And when I say mind, I don't mean brain. I mean like the way we think, the way we process information. So that could be things as simple as creating spatial systems for technology. Like right now, like I have no idea where half of my files are. I know they're in the cloud, but that's kind of a nebulous spot. Whereas I know exactly where my bedroom is. It's right over there. Right? Because there's a spatial system to these things that helps me to remember. Like if I need to remember my keys, I put them in the key box by the door. And then if I don't put them there, I can never find them. But if they're there, I can find them, right?
Yeah.
And so we can use similar types of existing mental models that the humans have to interface with technology in a way that makes more sense to us. We could also use things like background processing. So for example, right now, you and I are taking in millions of points of data at this very moment, but we're not even noticing it. When people say, you only use 10% of your brain, that's a fallacy. 10% of your brain might be focused on attention, but the rest of your brain is processing a bunch of information without you even being conscious of it. And the way that we process digital information is that everything is coming through that 10%. And that's the least efficient way for us to process that information. Instead, we could be using those background processings that are just innate to humans to deal with a lot of this technology. And also we could be creating technology that kind of anticipates our needs and helps us so that we're not, clicking through bunches of menus just to find that silly file that I just want to insert here, right? Like we could come up with much easier ways to do these things.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The devices I have to interact with technology now are basically keyboard, mouse, microphone, camera, screen. We also have, there's glasses, there's Apple Watches, there's iPhones, there's AirPods. Everything is getting closer to me on one side.
Yes.
And you have AI that's coming to enable everything better for me. But we're also creating robots that will be outside. And kind of to your point where I was talking to Andrew yesterday about it, it's like, if I had the choice between C-3PO and, R2-D2, I want R2-D2. I don't want some annoying robot in my house that I got to look at. Like, that seems terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
right? You want the technology to be technology and you to be you.
So if we're talking about ergonomic cognition and perhaps some of the subconscious elements of our mind actually working with technology, what does a device look like that could do that, and how close are we how close are we to making something like that a reality?
Well, it's kind of like what I was saying with the PC, right? All the enabling technologies exist. All the bits and pieces, they just haven't been put together in that kind of mother of all demos sort of way. And so, to me, I always say XR is to AI what the monitor is to the PC. Because the way that, so I had the pleasure of working on Microsoft HoloLens. In fact, I'm responsible for these gestures.
Cool.
And that have become kind of the industry standard. But you know, the thing that we've been so focused on with XR is a display. But really what we're missing out on is that XR allows you to put AI, like mechanical, technological vision on top of your face, right? So that you
XR.
can
What's
see.
XR?
Oh, okay. So by XR, I mean extended reality, which includes augmented and virtual reality.
Got it.
I tend to be more of an augmented reality person, not only because that's what I've worked on in numerous different ways, but also because I don't like the idea of being completely lost in another. I want to be in the present world, and I want to be human, and so I want to have X-ray vision, right? Like I want to have, you know, Superman's X-ray vision. I want to be able to do all these things, but you know, so as the technology gets closer and closer to the body, I think, you know, when we start to think about the primary device that most people use, it's no longer the PC. Our primary device, especially when we look at lower end markets and higher end markets, in fact, it becomes the phone, right? And the phone, if you think about it, is just the mental model that we have right now of how all of our devices work is that each one is its own device, right? You have an interaction with that one device. But as we move forward, it's going to be more and more important that we think about our one surface, no matter what device. And that makes a lot of sense when they start to come onto the body, because then I have these glasses, I have something in my ear, I have something on my wrist. I might even be wearing smart clothing or smart shoes or whatever. And it starts to become something that is just augmenting all my senses, right? So now if it's all like coming into my senses, well, the way that we as humans make sense of the world around us is through our perceptual system, which is colloquially called the five senses, but in actuality is more like 21 senses. And that's what that back of our brain that I was talking about, that other 90% of our brain is using to make sense of things around us. So the closer it gets to us, the more likely it is that we can start to create interfaces that take advantage of this innate cognition that we all possess. And then when we start to think about it's really funny because 10 years ago, Mark Andreessen said, software is eating the world, right? And we talked a lot about dematerialization. And now today, as you were pointing out, we have all these robots coming and popping up all over the place, from smart vacuums to self-driving cars to, robot arms. And so now it's starting to rematerialize, re-become, it's doing the opposite now. And so if we start to think about the fact that I can feel technology, I can't not just see it, but I can actually feel it, I can hear it, I can touch it, I can physically move around with it. This is how we inhabit the real world. And so we can start to create these kinds of different relationships to technologies that feel more embodied, which is actually the way we think too. We embody our cognition, right? You have just as many neurons in your gut and your spine as you do in your brain. Walking helps you think. All these things, like we can see time and time again that embodying our mind, and now we can embody technology, and that means that we can embody the mind of technology and collaborate with it in a more speed of thought sort of way.
It's fascinating. The Neuralink stuff is bananas. And kind of like what you're saying is like the deeper it gets into us, the more it might be able to we might be able to interact with it with novel ways. But I do feel like penetrating my skin is like too far. Like for me, I'm with you, like XR, if we're talking about glasses, amazing because it has contact with my skin. And I was thinking about this the other day that there's ways you can subtly move your ear. You can move your ears if you think about it, but you never do, because why would you? But if say, for example, your glasses, there was different biological cues that you could give for different functions. Like, so moving your right ear is a space bar, moving your left ear is something else, or, checking your blood temperature, or there's all these biological mechanics that we can actually use, that would communicate with, your own personal AI agent, a healthy or something.
Yeah. Well, in fact, when I was working on, I worked a lot on eye tracking for XR for glasses. And we can tell the difference between a natural blink and a blink to activate something. We can tell the difference. We actually created an interface where the way, like, you could, convergence is what happens when you're looking at something closer than 1.5 meters. Your eyes kind of come together in order to be able to focus it, whereas past that, your eyes just kind of stay fixed. And we could actually help make it so that somebody could pull an object to them just by focusing
Narrowing their
closer
vision.
in.
Cool.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of ways that we could create interactions with AI where you're not actually having to think I am interacting now, but it's just kind of responding to your like you're saying, your kind of twitch reactions or your natural things. But I think what's even more exciting to me is that, when it comes to XR, so the glasses, right? So they've done some there's been some really interesting experiments with it. Perhaps you've heard of, what's it called? Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on it right now. Okay, so they took these burn patients who were in excruciating pain, right? I'm going to tell you the story, and then eventually the name is going to come to me.
No problem.
They were in excruciating pain, and it was so bad that morphine only reduced their pain by like 20%. Okay, that's how bad this pain was. And so what they did is they put VR on the heads of these patients, and Snow World, that's what it's called. And they put this VR on top of their faces, and so there's this thing where vision is your dominant sense. It's what we use to triangulate all of our other senses, from what you hear to what you taste to what you're feeling, everything. Vision is dominant. And so if you've ever been really hot and you try to picture a cold day, you can kind of make yourself feel a little cooler, right? And so they tried to see how far they could take this. And so they put this VR on these burn patients, and here they are, they're immersed in a snowscape. It's like an icy scape, and there's snowmen, and you throw snowballs at the snowmen, and for some reason Paul Simon music is always playing. Just keeps you in a good mood, I guess. And what happened is that the patients in this VR experience, their pain went down 60% versus morphine's 20%. No drugs, 60% pain reduction. And what's really interesting is that then these patients were able to train their brain to be able to visualize that snowy scene whenever they were experiencing extreme pain from the burns. And then there's the Walk Again project. This is a fascinating thing to me. It's at Duke University. And what they did is they took paraplegics, people that had some sort of spinal cord damage that caused them to lose control of their legs. And they put a brain sensor right about here. Now, this ear to ear right here is where something called the M1 neuron runs. And your M1 neuron is basically what controls all your physical movements, from your eye blinking to to swallowing, to moving your fingers or your arms, okay? And this one right over here is where your brain controls your legs, okay? So you and I, when we want to move our leg, we don't think leg move and then leg moves, right? It's an instantaneous twitch response. There's no thinking involved. It just happens. And so what they did is they took a sensor, they put it there, And they trained these paraplegics, right? Because there's no longer communication between this and the leg for these folks because their spinal cord is damaged. So they trained them to use that same impulse that you and I use to move our leg to control a pair of VR legs, right? So anytime this little thing fired, the leg would move, right? And then they got good at it in VR. They're like, great. Now we're going to put an exoskeleton on your legs.
Yeah, mech suit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We're going to hook it up to that same thing, right? And something really interesting started to happen at about 6 months of this training. They regrew the musculature and circulatory system in their legs that would support walking. And then after a year, all 8 of the patients in this experiment experienced voluntary leg movement without any of the apparatus.
Wow.
And what happened is that the brain had recreated a net new neural pathway because things like, and the reason is simple. It sounds really magical, but it's really simple, is that our brains process VR, like the AI or XR, right? Any of this digital stuff, as if it's just regular sight. It's not something that's on a screen that we're having to translate into our brain. It's just coming into our brain as if it's real. And so it rehydrates neuroplasticity, meaning we learn faster in it. We are able to process that information with no more mental effort than it does anything else that you're looking at in your world. And so your brain really believes it. And so that allows you to kind of create net new capabilities that you didn't have before. And so this is where I start to get really excited about thinking about the cognitive ergonomics of our interface to AI. Because if we could create this kind of really sensorial, immersive experience to these of these technologies, be able to feel them, be able to hear them, be able to see them in the context of our normal world, we can start to build net new capabilities that we're not even thinking of humans being able to do.
Couple of
Let alone like get your tasks done on their daily basis much faster and much easier.
This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together. This is really interesting to me, and I think that there is thousands of years of data supporting this, even though XR is 10 years old, but you know, I'm a big meditator, and there's a lot. There's a lot of Dzogchen techniques of visualization. Exactly what you're talking about going into like a beautiful valley and seeing a full moon above you and touching the pond and like all these and so you get accustomed to it. Now, what happens with meditation is the Buddhists will describe jhanas. So like you start to ascend in kind of a hierarchical ascension of consciousness. Now, there's certain, sometimes you skip jhanas and go straight to the top. There's also certain substances that can help you go straight to the top. But, you know, the people that have been doing this for a long time, they will track the same exact things of like things that feel miraculous, but rather it's kind of like how you said it, which is our definition of miraculous. You know, what was it? Neural pathways are lubricated, you know? So now there's a downside to meditation, and that it's hard,
Yeah.
because it's really boring.
Really hard.
It's boring in the beginning. And so like most people, 95% of Buddhists never meditate. So like very few people actually do that. Now, if you can get a significant amount of the same results by using XR, you don't have to use your mind to visualize it. I'm not romantic in the sense that I think that you should have to like sit in a perfect lotus posture to achieve enlightenment. Like if I could just look at like a cool VR video that like, makes my legs super buff, that'd be awesome.
Right. It's funny that you say that because my friend Scott Summit, he's building this robot AR device that allows you to basically, summit, a mountain, and you feel like you're actually doing it because you're moving and stuff like that. So,
Quick question.
yeah, but I think, yeah.
Okay, real quick. I want to get your take as an XR expert too. My buddy Andrew
Sure.
had a really interesting take. We were talking about the absolute flop of Apple Vision Pro. And he was actually pretty happy about it and feels that like virtual reality is not democratic, because what he sees happening is once virtual reality gets like cheap and disposable, then basically all of the poverty classes are just going to be on that all day long because it makes their life so much better. And so you're essentially like losing, like it's bifurcating society, and people that are like just like in TikTok right 2 inches from their brain, and everybody else who isn't doing that, and then therefore creating dependencies. So that was his kind of like take on the future of virtual reality, and why ultimately Apple Vision Pro didn't work, because it was too expensive for the people that it should be actually targeting if they wanted to go through with it.
I appreciate that point of view, and I can see where he's coming from 100%. And it kind of outlines some of my issues with VR. So virtual reality, right, is like you're only seeing the virtual content. Augmented reality is mixed reality, where you're seeing both virtual and real world content together.
Yeah.
And so my take on why Apple Pro Vision, I think I'm calling it right. I always mess that word up. It failed is because it's just trying to use this interface, our computer interface, on your face.
Yeah.
And that's such a faulty way to think about it. And, this gets to what I was trying to say earlier about thinking about each device as its own surface and being self-contained in this box, right? When we think about this, even though we know it's like communicating with the cloud, we think about all of it being in this box, and this is kind of like the magic 8-ball screen that things come to the surface of and we interact with. But when you start to think about a different mental model, like let's think of a different way of envisioning what our relationship to devices, and this device in particular, and then, problem or lucky, the whole reason we have modern VR and AR devices is because he basically put this here, right? Like that's the whole magic behind Oculus, right? Now, this device is pretty spectacular because I'm not talking about the brand or anything. I'm talking about the idea of a smartphone in general. It has so many sensors in here, and it acts as kind of like my hub for all my smart interconnected devices around me. But the problem with with graphical interface GUI on this is that I have to kind of hunt and peck through it. And again, it just shows up on the screen. And it's like I'm kind of like shifting through papers. They're just magic papers, but it's paper on a screen. Now, if we start to think about this differently, if we think about this device as a sensor suite, not as a display, but as a sensor suite, suddenly we start to get some pretty interesting ways of thinking about things. So, for example, there's folks that are using AR on this device to do things like, okay, I want to create a network of IoT devices in my space connected to digital processes that live on my computer. And so I'm going to take this, I'm going to look through it, through the camera. and I'm going to say, I want that object and that object and that object to communicate with this object, right? Now we have a different way of, and we have AI that can say, okay, here's the code that needs to be work to make that happen. And as long as I have the proper sensors placed, suddenly I'm coding in a real world environment in a completely different way. Another example, let's say that let's be honest, I'm writing a book right now. And my inspiration comes from all kinds of places, not just from my computer, but as I'm walking down the street, I see something that inspires me. I have conversations like we're having now that inspires me. I write in my notebook because writing helps me process thought, right? So there's all these things that my brain is collecting throughout the day. But then when I sit down to translate it into a book form, I have to kind of tell the computer all those things. Like I have to repeat it, and I'm going to forget a bunch of it. But if I have these handy dandy machine vision on my face, right, I can say, oh, that image from my walk earlier, that passage from my notebook, and the conversation with Ryan, help me compile those things, right? And so it suddenly starts to take on a different meaning. It's no longer about, oh, I'm watching entertainment content on a screen really close to my face, like my mom told me never to do when I was a kid, right? She always told me if I sat too close to the screen, I'd ruin my eyes. So, but instead we're talking about a whole different way where I'm seeing through machine vision at the world, and that allows me to use that machine vision to activate both digital and analog processes for both myself and my environment.
I love it. I just thought of an idea.
Yeah.
So what I want is every time my kids mention a brand 5 times and I've never mentioned it, immediately take 5% of my investment portfolio and buy that company or brand.
Right? Like there's all kinds of stuff that you could be doing.
Just automate
like
it, you know?
Right? But then, you know, the other side of that, right? So at Amazon, or not Amazon, I never worked at Amazon. When I was at Microsoft working on HoloLens, I was working on gestures. So I was really concerned that we were going to false trigger these gestures just in our, like right now I'm doing a lot of the gestures that I created for that device. And so I convinced some friends of mine to wear GoPros on their head for a day. And, well, actually for a week. And the first day, they were fairly cautious and cognizant of the fact that I was going to be watching their video. And so they were pretty careful about what they recorded and what they didn't record. By day 4, all of them forgot it was on their head. And they started arguing with their spouses or, you know, going to the bathroom or doing all these things that you would never, ever, ever, ever want your friend to watch, let alone be in the hands of, you know, millions of other people, or allow for somebody to manipulate that information coming back to you. So I think the other part of this is in order for this to happen, not only do we need to change the HCI, the human computer interface, actually now we're calling it HCAI, human computer AI interface, but also we're going to need to rethink sort of the privacy and what does data really enable? And then how do we create sort of data marketplaces where rather than like the Googles and the Microsofts of the world and OpenAIs of the world scraping data to train their models, paying us for their models. So it's a little bit like what Jaron Lanier and Glenn Weil talk about a lot, which is this kind of data sovereignty that needs to kind of be discussed and a marketplace created around.
Jody, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. If we've got a couple more minutes, I got a couple of questions for you in the lightning round.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So first off, we're talking about like transcribing like a GoPro on your head. They got it now. There's a bunch of pendants and wearables. There's one called Beat Computer. Yeah. There's one called Fieldly. Are you using any of these?
I've tried them all. I don't use them on a daily basis because of that pesky privacy thing that I talked about.
Yeah.
And also, I don't see the benefit of them so much. Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah.
Is there a product that you wished existed right now, but doesn't?
Oh boy. Yeah. There's products that exist that I wish they just worked a little bit better. Like Notebook LM from Google. I love Notebook LM, but it doesn't quite help me in the way I think it will eventually, right? Like those kinds of products, they're almost there, but not quite. Also, like image generators as an artist, right? I like to draw something, and then I would love for the AI to help me imagine what that drawing could be, and then continue to draw, but keep my drawing. Like, don't just give me something that looks totally different. Like, help me refine my drawing.
And for folks that are just listening and not on video, but behind Jody is a beautiful sketch. That's one of your sketches. Or do you work just in black and gray?
No, I work in all kind of materials. I'm a painter.
Cool.
Who's shown all over, but I also work in metal and wood. And yeah, you name it.
Amazing. Considering the future and where we're going, if you were entering college, what would you study today?
I would study art. Because I think you really need a creator's mindset, and you need to have a lot of creative intelligence to really thrive in the world coming up. I don't know that coding is, you need to be literate in coding, but you don't necessarily need to be able to code, say in the next 5 years. That'll probably be yeah.
Cool. What are your favorite AI tools?
Ooh, okay. I'm really enjoying Claude right now. I don't know. I use it for all kinds of crazy stuff. Like I said, I like Notebook LM a lot. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. Yeah, I think those are my two favorite right now that I just can't stop playing with.
Amazing. Where can people get in contact with you online?
You can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. That's probably the best place right now because everything else is going through an overhaul.
Perfect. Amazing. Cognitive ergonomics. Jody, will you come back and talk to me more about this? This is a wellspring of stuff I'd never even thought about before.
I would love to, Ryan. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me this time. It was so fun to talk about this with you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye-bye.
Hey, founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new, or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show.